Today is Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, the senator from Rhode Island. Whitehouse.senate.gov is his website. Sen Whitehouse is his Twitter handle. And Senator, welcome back to the program. I'm curious to get your thoughts, given that this weekend we're going to have nationwide demonstrations about Sam Alito's draft opinion on Roe v. Wade. I'm curious your thoughts on the future of Roe and of abortion rights in the United States, and how that might interact with other human rights, and also how the Supreme Court got packed this way.
Well, I don't think Roe has a very bright future with this court. They may want to back off a little bit from the Alito opinion, just to try to give themselves a little bit of cover. But I think the directionality is absolutely crystal clear. I think that there's more to worry about in the Alito decision than just its views on abortion, because the reason it blows up the right of a woman to have an abortion is because it's not founded in the Constitution, and it's a gravely skeptical opinion about the general right to privacy, which is the original right off of which the abortion right depends. But plenty of other rights depend off of that right to privacy as well, including the right to marry who you wish, whether they're same sex or whether they're different race, and the right to have contraception without the state regulating it. There are a lot of privacy rights out there, and this decision was a torpedo at the fundamental privacy right doctrine. And this is just one piece of a much larger portfolio that this radical Supreme Court has, because they were put on the court to be radical by big right-wing dark money interests who now see this as their payday. They picked judges who they knew would do the crazy stuff they want them to do. That was what their goal was, and to see it working should come as no surprise.
So how did these guys get in a position to be essentially picking Supreme Court judges for the United States? This is another dimension of minority rule, it seems. And
Yep.
and how did they pull it off? I realize this has been a kind of a 40-year effort, or maybe even longer.
Yeah, it's been a long effort. They had to build a lot of infrastructure. They had to build a lot of phony front groups. They had to recruit a lot of politicians who'd be willing to go along with the gag. But the real machinery was when Donald Trump said he was going to pick Federalist Society judges. That's where it kind of surfaced. And the Federalist Society was able to pick 3 judges, and they did so with a process that was completely off the books in a back room at the time when they were receiving huge anonymous contributions. So the most logical conclusion to draw is that somebody was paying very large amounts of money to be in the room when the lists of who could be a Supreme Court justice and when the selection of the Supreme Court justice was being done. Weird enough that this was outsourced to a private organization, never happened before in history, not in any country that I know of, but weirder still that the process was so freaky and secret, and that there was so much dark money swirling around it. And if that wasn't enough, then once they had the names, they had another private organization, also funded by dark money, run the ad campaigns against Garland, for Gorsuch, for Kavanaugh, for Barrett. And then if that wasn't enough, once they've got them on the court, they've got a whole array of phony front groups that turn up as what are called amicus curiae, friends of the court, who file briefs in orchestrated chorus that tell the selected judges what to do. And by gum, who knew? They seem to always win.
So one of the reasons why I keep saying that I want you to be our next Attorney General is that you have your finger on this stuff. Who are these people who are funding this? Is it just Citizens United and its forebearers going back to Buckley and Bellotti and whatnot? That have enabled this? Who are these people, and how are they able to wield such power that they've essentially taken over an entire branch of the United States government?
It's a long story than longer story than we have, but Center for Media and Democracies has been able to dig out total spending on this of $580 million.
Wow.
And that's just what they've been able to dig out. There are dozens of groups associated with it that are all very coordinated. And there's kind of a feedback loop between the enterprise that packs the court and what the court does for the enterprise that packs the court. And as you pointed out, it started with Bellotti and then went on through an array of other decisions that one by one added more and more corporate political power when the Constitution has none, zero, none. They've added more and more corporate power. And then in Citizens United, by not enforcing its transparency terms and allowing huge rivers of dark money to flow, they've actually created an unlimited dark money corporate political power operation. Not in the Constitution, created by Republican appointees on the court in a steady program that has worked in, I guess you'd call it syncopation, with the $580 million plus worth of political effort on the other side.
Now, I'm looking at separate groups that have their own hobby horses, their own special interests. You've got the libertarian ideologues. You know, David Koch has passed away now, but famously ran for president or vice president in 1980 on the Libertarian ticket on a platform of, end Social Security, end Medicare, do away with all regulatory agencies, get rid of the income tax, et cetera. So you've got these crazed right-wing ideologues. That's one group. You've got people like his brother, presumably, and others in the oil business and big business who chafe at having their industries regulated. They could make more money if they could put more poison into the air or into the water. That kind of thing. You've got the religious freaks who are essentially America's Taliban, who think that women should be completely under the thumb of men, and next they're going to be going after women wearing short shorts or something like that. I mean, they have in the past. I'm old enough to remember this from the 1950s and 60s. So you've got the religious nuts or prudes or whatever you want to say. You've got some that are organized. You've got the evangelical, the white supremacist evangelical movement, or at least the white supremacist part of the evangelical movement, and the Catholic Church, who are very interested in ending abortion. To what extent do each of these...
And then you've got the Republican political network that wants to have the rules of political engagement in the country cooked so that minority voters have a harder time voting and that big corporate dark money has an easier time influencing.
Exactly.
So it's a wide array, and the good news for all of those rascals is that if they can capture and control the Supreme Court, they all get to share in the feast.
So are they collaborating with each other, or is there a lot of overlap? How so? How does this happen?
A lot of overlap. Well, it's a bigger picture than this, and again, it would take a lot of time, but let me just focus on one group. First of all, they tend to operate in pairs. What's called a 501c3 and a 501c4. They tend to be twinned, same address, same staff, same donors, same everything. No real corporate veil between the two. But then you get groups that spin off of them that are not real groups. They're just like a fictitious name for the original pair to operate through. So you've got the Judicial Crisis Network, which was involved in spending the money on the ads against Garland for Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Barrett. So they were in the court packing scheme. And that's like one fictitious name of that group. But then you go on to the Honest Elections Project, and that's a voter suppression operation. It's not related to the courts. It's voter suppression stuff. And they have their own fictitious name, but it's actually the same entity. And then they created one called Free to Learn, which is out to get people outraged about critical race theory and scare people about what's going on in classrooms. So one's about education, one's about voting, one's about packing the court, and they're all actually the same legal entity.
Wow. Is there any, we have about a minute and a half left here, is there any analog to that in the Democratic Party? And how tied to the Republican Party are these groups?
They would love to say that there is. And there's a very conspicuous operation being run by the Republican dark money operation to try to smear groups on the Democratic side as being equivalent. And the fact of the matter is we're late to the game. We're not even close. And we don't have anything like the power, clout, or collaboration of the groups on their side. Moreover, although we do dark money, it tends to be kind of, people who want to do good and to have their views reflected in politics. Whereas on the Republican side, it is a money-making operation. These are groups that can put $1,000 into politics and makes $100,000 in deregulation. They can put $6 million into politics and make $6 billion in free pollution and tax breaks. So there's a persistence and a motive to the Republican side of this that we don't share.
Yeah, and therefore the billionaires on the Democratic side, the few that we know of, tend to be more interested in good government than advancing a personally selfish agenda. Extraordinary.
And that's why when we bring up the Disclose Act, every Democrat is going to vote for it, and almost no Republicans will, if any. None have so far.
Sadly. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, one of the great guys. Whitehouse.senate.gov. Send Whitehouse on Twitter. Senator, thank you so much for dropping by today.
Thanks, Tom.
Always great talking with you. We will be back with Anything Goes Friday. We'll continue our conversations on the other side of this break. Stick around. Oh, Joyce is going to be with us, too.